Hello, welcome to Holistically Speaking. I'm your host, Marella DeVoe, and I'm very excited that you joined us for our show today. This is a show that I've been looking forward to because we're going to be talking about a topic that I know very little about. So it's been, even just in getting ready for the show, it's been kind of a discovery process for me. So I'm really looking forward to what I'm going to learn on this show today. Our show is about autism, and originally we were going to have a panel of a couple different experts, people who've worked with autistic clients, but we are joined by someone really wonderful, Martha Loving, and in talking to Martha, I've learned so much just this morning and just as we were getting ready for the show. So welcome, Martha. It's such a pleasure to have you here. And you're a painting therapist. So you work with people with autism through painting therapy and a few other things that you've been telling me about. So lovely to have you.
Thank you for inviting me.
So I wanted to start off by reading this that I think we've all heard. We were talking about it, and it's touched all of us. When I first read it, it really moved me. And so I'll just read it. I read it on Facebook. It says, "I hear things more loudly. I see things more clearly. I smell things more strongly. I feel things you don't. I taste things differently. I have autism." And I just thought it was such a wonderful, beautiful, non-issue driven way to describe autism and what someone's experience is. But I wanted to ask you, how does this describe the people that you know, that you've worked with autism?
I believe it explains that they are very much connected to higher vibration and the spiritual world. They are oversensitive in a way, and so they feel things more, they see things more clearly, as it says there, and yet at the same time they're not quite in their bodies, they're not really grounded. The autistic children are not really in their bodies, they're still hovering back behind themselves, and partly in the spiritual world, partly living in between the worlds. And I know that those concepts are a little bit difficult to grasp at first, but that's really where they are. And they're living mostly from the shoulders up, in their heads. They're very intellectual, very smart, but there's something yet that they're not quite in their bodies, not quite grounded. A lot of them have social issues. That would be the realm of the heart and the lungs.
Right.
And they also don't breathe as deeply or rhythmically as they could.
Right.
And so we work with that with the painting therapy, with the forces of light and darkness, as well as particular colors. And their particular color that they're associated with is indigo.
So before we go into the whole field of painting and the color, I just, in hearing this description and hearing you talk about people with autism, it gives me the impression of people who are very overwhelmed by the environment, right? And at the same time not very connected with their own experience of themselves, right? So it's almost like, where are they? You know, if they're not out there, but they're also not having a strong experience of themselves, it's like, what is it that they're connected to?
Again, they're connected to spirit. They're connected to where they've come from. They haven't gotten into their bodies. They're not able to incarnate into their bodies.
Oh,
so if you believe that we are spiritual beings having a physical experience, then we come from the spiritual world through the mother, through birth, and the first color we see is magenta. But they haven't even come through those warm colors yet. They are still in indigo. They're still in the spiritual world, partly. They haven't incarnated fully. And it doesn't matter what age. And it's also connected to technology and their heads. If you think about the chakras, and the colors of the chakra are like the rainbow, and the lower chakras are the reds, and the upper chakras are the blues. The lower chakras are lower vibration, the upper chakras are a higher vibration, and they're actually indigo, the brow chakra. So a higher vibration, they're able to hear things more clearly. As you were saying the verse in the beginning,
Right.
they're connected more to these higher vibrations of higher spirit. And so we want to get them fully incarnated first, that they know who they are, that they can feel comfortable in their bodies, and then also when they're balanced inwardly, they can be more balanced outwardly.
Right.
And they can be more social and learn how to get along with people.
So that's interesting, because if we think about the chakras, right, you know, from the root chakra, red to orange to yellow and green, not so much, I'm not relating to it so much with the colors, but you were just saying, you know, the red first chakra is that groundedness, that, you know, being in the world, you know, kind of being in relation to the world, right? And then there's, you know, I'm not going to go through all the chakras, but then the heart chakra is about being able to feel and connect to other people, and they are challenged with that.
Yes, they are.
And then the throat chakra is about communication, and they're challenged with that as well.
They are.
I can see now what you mean, that they're like, they're all here.
Yes.
And everything else down there is challenged.
Is challenged, that's right. And as above, so below.
Okay.
As below, so above. And one of their biggest challenges happens to be digestive issues. So when they are not quite right upstairs in their thinking, then they are also challenged with their digestive systems, and vice versa. When they have a lot of digestive issues, then they have more of the thinking imbalances as well.
Yeah, there's just so much to explore on this. So I will definitely come back to the digestion point, because I know you said you have some nutrition tips that you give some of your clients, so I want to touch on those for sure. But let's start with your paint therapy. Tell us a little bit about what you do with your autistic clients.
Well, first I ask them to look at all the colors that I have set out. There are 20 colors, and then I ask them to just put the paintbrush in the color that they like to paint with first, and put it on the paper anywhere they want to. And most of the people that I'm working with autism are children, and they don't have too much of a problem with that. They usually choose the color indigo.
Interesting.
That's why it's related to this indigo. They choose that. That's where they are. And so they paint, and most frequently they don't use a lot of the lower chakra colors, or the warm colors, I should say, the reds and oranges. They stay in the indigo, in the darker colors, indigo and violet. And so one of the colors that's near that indigo is this cobalt blue, the throat chakra color. And so that's the color of devotion, and that's the color you want to build up for them slowly, that they then, it's not just their world, it is a world that they can be devoted to other people as well.
Interesting. So still connecting to this whole like chakra color, you know, vibration, the vibration of colors theme. So if they're in their heads and in their indigo, and this next chakra is the cobalt blue, is it that proximity that's what you work on? Can it then, do you go down to green and?
Yes, or sometimes I might use a balance of the color in a color harmony. So the color harmony for indigo is yellow.
Okay.
And with a depressed patient, they are in that darkness of indigo and they can't bear the light. But with an autistic patient or a client, they can take some of that yellow. It's different for different cases and different diseases or imbalances. So the yellow is good for the autistic person.
So what does working with yellow do for them?
Well, it strengthens their thinking, and it those two colors, the indigo and the yellow, have to do with the nerve sense system. And you could think about the nerves, the sheaths of the nerves are indigo, and the light traveling through the nerves is yellow. So I once asked a neurologist if there is actually a spark of light in the nerve endings when they come together in the brain, and he said yes. So there's actually spiritual light in our thinking.
Right.
And the source of light is here in the brain, and we have light in our fingertips because the nerve endings go all the way to the extremities,
Right.
everywhere. And so again, the sheaths are indigo, and the light traveling through is yellow.
Oh, interesting. So you sit with them the first time and you have them pick a color, and many times they're picking the darker colors, the indigos or violets. So what do they do once they pick a color?
They start painting the paper, and sometimes they put colors everywhere, sometimes they just put color in a certain place, sometimes they leave holes. It's all different. But then I'm going to look at their painting later and say, oh, where's the light? Well, there isn't any. And this painting is all dark. Where is and the darkness is using the blue colors rather than the warm colors. Or do they have any warm colors? Are their colors speaking to each other, or do they come together in a slap, as in separated colors? And strong colors, are they using very strong colors? Are they using very light colors? Where are they?
And what does this all tell you? When you're looking at these things, what does it tell you?
A whole lot. And even how they hold the paintbrush. If you have the paintbrush, a long-handled paintbrush, and you have a piece of tape, a white piece of tape in the middle is where the brush is balanced in your hand. If you're holding the paintbrush at the very tip near the bristles, then you're too much in your head. You're too incarnated. If you're holding the paintbrush way back at the tip of the length of the brush, then you're not incarnated into your body. You're way away. You don't want to come in to incarnate. And usually they're holding it way back away from the bristles.
Wow, interesting.
Yes, it is very interesting.
Yeah. So I know earlier today you were telling me that you work with people usually for a series of sessions.
Yes.
Like so you said 12 to 18, something
Yes.
like that.
Yes.
So after you start analyzing and looking at what it is that they're doing, what do the next sessions look like? What do they do?
Yes, good question. I usually ask them to do 3 free paintings, which means they're not guided by me. And I look at those 3 as a sequence and see if they change. Some children, when they're younger, they actually start to self-correct by the 2nd or 3rd painting, which is pretty interesting to see. And I can take them then on that next step of the therapeutic path. The sessions number 4 through 12 or 18 are the therapeutic path. And so slowly I take them from where they are to where they would be more balanced. And something happens in that time period. I'm asking them to do 2 sessions a week at least, and that would be 6 to 9 weeks. And during that time period, it is a whole moon rhythm. 30 days is a whole moon rhythm. So if you want to change anything in anyone's habit body, etheric body, then you want to go 30 full days and you establish a new rhythm. So if you want to take something away, a bad habit, you do it for 30 days. You don't do it for 30 days. If you want to add a good habit, then you place that in for 30 days. And then 40 days is even more magical. So that 40 days is the 6 weeks. And then go from there.
Right. So when you're saying that over the therapeutic process, whether it's happening spontaneously as they're shifting themselves or you're kind of coaching them, you said that they're becoming more balanced. So what is that looking like in the painting?
Well, for one thing, I'm working with the laws of light and darkness and color as we see it in nature. So, for instance, a client will do their free painting and it won't have any relationship whatsoever to the natural world. There's no ground, there's no light, the darkness is not moving toward the light, all kinds of things that you don't see. So the first thing I would do is just have them paint one color and have it darker at the bottom of the page, getting lighter and lighter and lighter as you go up the page. And it's just simply light and darkness. The second painting might be painting that same thing with still one color, but finding a horizon line so that you've got the earth and you've got the sky. And just that much on a flat piece of paper builds space. Everything that we're doing in color is building space. We're 3-dimensional human beings, and they usually paint paintings, their free paintings, are flat. So we're trying to build up space. And you do that by light and darkness, and you do that by using the gestures of the colors.
Interesting. So this is starting to make me feel or get the impression that as they're doing this, they are learning to connect more with the, let's call it the reality of their outside world, where they're starting to, as they create it themselves, they're maybe better able to perceive it around them. Yes?
Yes.
So tell us more, this is my interpretation, so tell us more about what's happening for them as they're doing these paintings.
Well, everything that is in nature is in us, and we are that. And I could give you, if we have time, give you a little snippet of how that works. So what's happening is that they're balancing within themselves, and at the same time they're actually relating more in a healthy way to the outer world. But they can't relate more healthy to the outer world until they've done that inside themselves. You have to find your own balance first, and then you can relate more to the outer world. But these people, many people, we are in the time period right now of indigo, where we're working from the shoulders up. We're isolated from each other. We live in a virtual reality. Everyone's stuck on the device, the television, the computer, and they don't even have a relationship to nature anymore. So I'm bringing that connection back to these people, to everyone that I work with, by working with the laws of light and darkness.
And so what do you notice, and are there very specific, can you tell some specific or concrete things that you're noticing them shifting in them as you're working with them, or is it mostly subtle?
It's very subtle.
Okay.
Very subtle. And I can see the changes because I'm watching them in their painting work. I don't always get to see the changes in them at home. So it's nice when the parents will report back to me, or the person will report back to me. And again, it can be very subtle and it can be very dramatic. Usually it's not dramatic. We don't want to take a running start and hit the brick wall. We want to have soft transitions in life. So all the things that I'm doing in the painting work, instead of having their colors come together and slap, I'm teaching them how to find soft transitions. So that is subtle changes. And subtle changes last.
For sure.
And they don't put the soul into a shock.
Right, for sure. So do you have a favorite story of somebody you worked with that's maybe kind of close to your heart that you might want to share with us, or be willing?
Yes, certainly. I have a young boy who was about 6 or 7 years old. He didn't speak, and he was autistic, and parents were both engineers, so very much intellectual. And he was a boy who would throw everything around him down the grate for the heat air conditioner grate. He'd just throw everything down there when people weren't paying attention to him. And so slowly, with his painting work, he was able to get more grounded, more in himself, more incarnated, and he stopped throwing things down the grate.
Oh, wow. And that's, very specific, very, very concrete.
Yes.
Wonderful.
And he also started to speak slowly. Over time, he started to speak more words.
Oh, wow. That's wonderful. So, you were mentioning the connection to digestion. So, tell us a little bit about that. I know you have, well, just tell us a little bit more about it.
Well, again, that ancient axiom of as above, so below, it works the opposite way too. As below, so above. And it actually means more about the spiritual world, as above in the heavens, so below on the earth, and vice versa. But in us, in human beings, it has to do with our thinking and our digestive system. Of course, this middle sphere of the heart and the lungs, the rhythmic system, is what weaves together those two polar opposites of our thinking and our digestive pole. And so when you have the autistic person who has digestive issues, they definitely will have issues with their thinking as well, and vice versa. And what my nutritional advice is for clients with autism is to really look at their diet and to start to change their diet, to eliminate genetically modified foods, eat organic,
Absolutely.
and look at their relationship to wheat. Is it also that's something that's throwing things off? But definitely to eat probiotics, good beneficial bacteria, fermented foods, and prebiotics, those foods that help the probiotics to feed when they're going through the gut. And that really helps to straighten out a lot of the things upstairs too.
And not that we're going to get into the causes or believed causes of autism, but just before the show we were talking about a few different doctors, mostly in Europe, right, who have pinpointed to a possible connection with vaccines, mostly because of the destruction of intestinal flora, or the effect on intestinal flora, right? And and how that's connected.
Yes. There's a Dr. Wakefield, I think his name is, and there's actually a movie that was produced about his biography, you could say, and his research that he did in England. And it was all the mothers who came to him and said, "You really have to take my son on. Every time you've changed his diet to eat good food and to really heal the digestive system, his autism has improved."
Yeah.
And so there is definitely a connection.
Yeah. The more that we look into the healthy environment of our intestines, the more we realize how it affects everything. You know, from immunity, your immune system's response, to depression, to weight management, and now you're sharing with us how how strongly it's connected to autism. And so you recommend people get off genetically modified foods.
Absolutely.
Maybe avoid gluten, take a probiotic and a prebiotic, the food that feeds the bacteria, right?
Yes, and I'm not a nutritionist and I'm not a doctor, so I don't prescribe, but I do advise people, and I also work with their physicians or their naturopath, and in conjunction with that, and I also teach doctors about the painting therapy work that I do.
Wonderful. So what other suggestions, or if we're hoping that we have some parents of children with autism watching the show, and what other tips or suggestions or recommendations would you have for them?
Well, frequently we will find that they have a sensitivity to too much noise. So I would say to limit that noise factor or the sounds, and that they have quiet sounds and beautiful sounds around them, beautiful music, sounds from nature.
Right.
And also to limit their technology.
Right. So we have a number of resources to share with our viewers today, so we'll get those on the screen in a moment, I'm sure. So a few shows ago, we shared with you the first 15 minutes of Autism, the musical. It's a wonderful kind of a reality movie of how this woman put together a musical with autistic children. It's a beautiful movie, which you can find on YouTube. Then there's a website called generationrescue.org, and it has all sorts of information on prevention, treatment, and support for autism. On Facebook, you can look up the group Autism, Different, Not Less. That's where we found the little poem or quote that I read at the beginning. In Vermont, there are a number of resources. There's the VermontFamilyNetwork.com with all sorts of local information and support for families. Of course, there's the Howard Center in Burlington with different therapists to work with. There's GraceArts.com. Their headquarters are in Hardwick, and they do art workshops all over the state, not just for people with autism, but all sorts of different developmental differences. There's VermontHippotherapy.com, and this is a woman who does work with autistic children and horses, and I believe she works exclusively with autism, so that's a wonderful resource. And lightwavehealingarts.net. This is an acupuncturist who has some experience working with autistic children, and we're hoping we might have her later on another show, maybe sharing that perspective on autism. And these are your resources, so can you tell us a little bit about those?
Yes, the first, of course, is my website, and then the second is Light, Darkness, and Color in Painting Therapy by my teacher, Leon Collot-D'Herbois. And then we have The Study of Man by Rudolf Steiner. We have Autism, A Holistic Approach by Bob Woodward and Dr. Marga Hogenboom. And Evolution's End by Joseph Chilton Pearce. The Biology of Transcendence, The Blueprint of the Human Spirit by Joseph Chilton Pearce, and Seeking Spirit Vision by Dennis Klosek.
Wonderful. Well, that's a pretty thorough set of resources that we've given our viewers. So in the last few minutes of the show, I was just thinking, going back to color, do you have any sort of suggestions or recommendations? Because I'm thinking, well, what about their bedrooms or their clothes or flowers? You know, how can people use color? What would you suggest?
Very good question, because our environment all around us affects us very, very much. And I would say a very light indigo color, light blue, might be a good color for their bedrooms, or perhaps a light yellow. Sometimes I would never recommend, generally speaking, a yellow bedroom, because it could lead to anxiety. Too much yellow is going to anxiety. But with the autistic child, they are in the too light indigo. And so maybe you meet them where they are by painting the bedroom that color, but if you were to give them yellow, that's the color harmony for the indigo.
Yeah, I would imagine that trying to work with that color harmony would be kind of a safe place to meet them where they are at with the indigo, but then also trying to kind of getting them to connect or balance out with the yellow.
Yes.
Right? And certainly probably not bold patterns or things that are kind of jarring.
Right. I would say stay with solid colors, not too much detail.
Right.
Stay away from the detail.
Right. So you've shared with us so much today: color and painting, recommendations for nutrition, the color of their bedroom. Any last suggestions or tips or things that you would like to share with our viewers before we wrap up?
Love them. A lot.
That's wonderful. Love them a lot, right. And, you know, I think that the beauty about all of this, especially as I think about that opening kind of paragraph, that poem, and everything that we've talked about, it's just not seeing it, I think, as kind of a disability. It's just recognizing they're in a different space, and how do we help them connect, right?
How do we help them balance? We are who we are, and we have gifts to give. And so how do we give them? We can't give them if we're not balanced inwardly.
Right.
But we'll find our way to giving those gifts when we are balanced inwardly as well as outwardly.
Right. And also how, in connecting with them, how it helps us connect to ourselves and learn more about ourselves and the world around us.
Definitely.
So thank you so much for joining us, Martha. It's been a pleasure having you, and I've certainly learned a lot. And thank you for tuning in, and I hope you learned some new resources or tools as well. I hope you will join us for our show. In this very moment, what our show is next week, but I'm sure it will be very informative for you. You can always email us at holisticallyspeakingtv@gmail.com. Thank you for joining us again, and I hope you have a lovely day.
Thank you.